Hello, this is Lieutenant Colonel Howard. This is a short overview of S300, Joint Logistics and Army Sustainment of Unified Action. This class will help you understand Joint Logistics Doctrine and U.S. Army sustainment capabilities supporting joint and multinational operations at the strategic and operational levels of war. Here are your S300 takeaways. The assessment questions on Exam 1 for this class are directly related to these key takeaways. Strategic context. The graphic on this slide does a nice job of illustrating the framework within the strategic context. It shows the support that is generated from our national providers and linkages to the three levels of war, the organizations operating at these levels. These levels of war are often discussed in a hierarchical way. There are times sustainment organizations, however, may skip levels. The Defense Logistics Agency, or DLA, is the nation's combat support logistics support agency. They account for the provision of nearly 100% of the military's consumable items, including bulk fuel and subsistence items. Sustainment originates at the strategic base for U.S. forces. The strategic base consists of the Department of Defense and at the industrial base. The industrial bases, which consist of a mix of privately and government-owned capabilities, manufactures, maintains, modifies, and repairs resources required by U.S. forces. ADRP 4-0, paragraph 2-2 says, Joint interdependence is the purposeful reliance by one service's forces on another service's capabilities to maximize the complementary and reinforcing effects of both. Army forces operate as part of an interdependent joint force. For more information on joint interdependence, see ADRP 4-0. This slide describes the Joint Logistics Framework. Military leaders conduct globally integrated logistics operations in a complicated, interconnected, trans-regional environment. The joint logistics environment is the sum of conditions and circumstances that affect logistics. The joint logistics environment exists at the strategic, operational, and tactical levels. The focus of logistics changes as you move from one level to the next, as commanders must optimize processes against required outcomes and optimize capabilities to meet requirements. All of this in order to enable freedom of action. Sustainment originates in the strategic support area. The strategic support area consists of the defense industrial base that includes DoD, government, and private sector worldwide industrial complexes with capabilities to perform research and development, design, produce, and maintain military weapon systems, subsystems, components, and parts to meet military requirements. The strategic support area generates Army sustainment capabilities which enable sustained operations through end-to-end processes that drive efficiencies across military services, agencies, and industry. Joint logistics is the coordinated use, synchronization, and often sharing of two or more combatant commands or military departments' logistics resources. Take a moment to consider why the definition of joint logistics is different from the joint function of sustainment definition. Observe how the joint function of sustainment is both composed of personnel services and at the joint level, finance. Also take note that joint logistics functions include joint health services. Joint logistics takes place throughout the operational environment, or OE. Service components provide the forces, materials, capabilities, while the Joint Force Commander's staff focuses on integrating the capabilities within operations. Access to secure networks is necessary to sustain joint force readiness. Effective networks are used to find and access relevant information, facilitate collaboration, distribute data to forward deployed areas, and ensure the enterprise infrastructure for evolving DoD systems is resilient. This slide depicts agencies involved in sustainment of joint forces. The Joint Staff plays a significant role in synchronizing logistic support to combatant commands or Joint Force Commanders. The purpose of the JLEnt is to protect and sustain military power across the globe at a time and place of our choosing and represents a U.S. comparative advantage that provides multiple options to our nation's leadership and multiple dilemmas to potential adversaries. The JLEnt is a multi-tiered matrix of key global logistics providers cooperatively structured through an assortment of collaborative agreements, contracts, policy, legislation, or treaties, all utilized to provide the best possible support to the Joint Force Commander or other supported organizations. The key DoD organizations in the JLEnt include the Services, Combatant Commands, Defense Logistics Agency, or DLA, the Joint Staff J3, and the Joint Staff J4. Other U.S. government departments and agencies, NGOs, and commercial partners also play a vital role in virtually all aspects of the JLEnt and function on a global scale, providing comprehensive end-to-end capabilities. The JLEnt may also include multinational partners and international organizations. The JLEnt is interconnected among global providers supporting and supported organizations and units and other entities. Knowing the roles, responsibilities, relationships, and authorities of JLEnt partners is essential to planning, executing, controlling, and assessing logistics operations. This slide introduces some key terms that apply to joint logistics. Unity of effort is the coordination and cooperation toward common objectives, even if the participants are not necessarily part of the same command or organization. Unity of effort is the product of successful unified action. For joint logisticians, unified action synchronizes and integrates logistics capabilities focused on the commander's intent. JLEnt visibility is access to logistics processes, resources, and requirements data to provide information necessary to make effective decisions. JLEnt visibility is inclusive of the subcomponents in-transit visibility and the Defense Transportation System. Rapid and precise response is the ability of the core logistics functions, military and commercial, to meet the constantly changing needs of the joint force. The effectiveness of joint logistics can be measured by assessing the following attributes or key performance indicators. Velocity is at the core of responsiveness. Velocity does not mean everything moves at the same rate or fastest rate, but everything moves according to priorities at the rate that provide a balance between efficiency and effectiveness to fully meet the combatant commander's operational needs. Reliability is reflected in the dependability of global providers and the development of a resilient distribution network able to deliver required support when promised. Reliability is characterized by a high degree of predictability or time-definite delivery of support. Efficiency is related directly to the amount of resources required to achieve a specific objective. In tactical and operational environments, inefficiency increases the logistics footprint, force protection requirements, and risk. At the strategic level, inefficiency increases the cost and risk for the operation. Effectiveness is the ability of the JLEnt to fully meet the combatant commander's operational requirements within acceptable risk. Effectiveness is providing the right logistic solutions at the right time and place. You are already familiar with the Army's Title X responsibilities, which were discussed during previous F100 and C200 lessons. Services are required to support themselves unless explicitly directed in orders. Services must fulfill their Title X responsibilities to their subordinates. Services may be directed to provide support to other services through DAFL, Directed Authority for Logistics, Executive Agency, or Lead Service, which we'll discuss later. Take note that all of these Title X responsibilities are sustainment related except for recruiting, organizing, and training. We'll talk more about these terms in class. When it comes to creating joint interdependency, the authorities invested in the SecDef and combatant commanders are critical to supporting the joint force. Take note that only the Secretary of Defense or the Deputy Secretary of Defense may designate a DoD executive agent and assign associated responsibilities, functions, and authorities within DoD. The other authorities listed here belong to the combatant commander by virtue of the authority provided by combatant command, which itself is found in Title X. This slide simply illustrates the authorities discussed previously. We'll talk more about this in class when we go over service agreements, common user logistics, and Army support to other services. This slide overlaps with the instruction you've received about boards, centers, cells, and so on. This slide is designed to help you understand more about joint interdependence. So here we have TRANSCOM, a functional combatant commander operating as a supporting combatant commander with its subordinate service component commanders and their relationship to the geographic combatant commander and its Army service component command. You also see the DoD support provided by DLA and its forward positioned support team. The purple boxes highlight key joint organizations. The DDOC, or Deployment and Distribution Operations Center, is at the strategic level under TRANSCOM, while the JDDOC belongs to the GCC. Also note how Army Materiel Command provides support through an Army Field Service Brigade. As the Army's materiel indicator, AMC provides national-level sustainment, acquisition, integration support, contracting services, selected logistics support to Army forces, and it also provides related common support to other services, multinational, and interagency partners. The combatant commander may also establish boards, centers, offices, and cells to meet increased requirements and to coordinate the logistics effort. And examples here include a Joint Transportation Board, Joint Deployment and Distribution Operations Center, which was mentioned on the previous slide, a Joint Petroleum Office, or JPO, and the Operational Contracting Support Integration Cell, or OCSIC. More information about the tasks and purposes of these ad hoc organizations can be found in JP 4-0. Some of you may have had experience with any of the DoD's prepositioning programs. DoD prepositions equipment and supplies on both land and sea. They are critical programs for reducing closure times of combat and support forces needed in the early stages of a contingency. They also contribute significantly to reducing demands on the defense transportation system. All of the services and DLA have prepo programs. Army prepositioned stocks, or APS, provide critical capabilities to combatant commanders. Please take note of the various APS categories and APS capabilities. Did you know that the Army prepositions assets to support humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, as well as non-combatant evacuation operations, or NEO? U.S. forces are unlikely to operate without coalition partners in the future. Sustainment planners need to consider our multinational partners in terms of requirements and capabilities when planning and executing sustainment operations. JP 3-16, Multinational Operations, discusses the importance of international rationalization, standardization, and interoperability for achieving practical cooperation. Take note of the differences between NATO principles and our joint principles. These NATO principles are important when dealing with multinational operations because multinational fighting forces are a collective of sovereign nations. Some of this information might be important later on when we discuss JRSO&I and deployment in future lessons. This slide provides a doctrinal perspective on why the Army conducts sustaining operations. This was addressed earlier, but please observe how joint health services and financial management differ in joint doctrine. Army sustainers must understand the operational framework in order to properly synchronize sustaining operations. Ultimately, maneuver commanders set priorities, but Army sustainers can also make informed recommendations on sustainment priorities based on the operational framework that the maneuver commander establishes, and this is true at any echelon. During our practical exercise, you will brief several of the organizations represented on this chart. The slide lacks other services capabilities. However, you should be prepared to explain where other departments and organizations can fit into the theater of operations. Take note, the Theater Sustainment Command, or TSC, is the operational headquarters that links the strategic enablers to the tactical formations playing a key role in the JLEnt. Well, this has been a short overview of joint logistics and Army sustainment support of unified action. See you in class.